Hi there, this is Kevin Patton with a brief audio introduction to episode number 59 of the A&P Professor podcast, also known as TAPP Radio, a virtual salon for teachers of human anatomy and physiology. In the upcoming full episode, that is episode number 59, we're going to be covering pseudogenes and why that name, pseudogene, may be problematic. I'm also going to talk about how to treat insomnia with what you already have with you at this very moment. I'll keep you guessing for a few days. And the featured topic in episode number 59 is going to be a continuation of our conversation about flashcards, especially the hidden powers of flashcards and extra bells and whistles that we can use or that our students can use to help them in their learning process. All that and more coming up in episode number 59. Free distribution of this podcast is sponsored by the Master of Science in Human Anatomy and Physiology Instruction, the HAPPY degree. This isn't like a typical master's degree. This one is designed for folks who already have a related advanced degree, like a master's or a doctorate, and want to even out their science background while they learn more about the art and science of teaching. Check out this online graduate program at nycc.edu/happy, that's HAPI, or click the link in the show notes or episode page. There's always a new cohort forming, so now's a good time to check it out. Maybe it could be part of your New Year's resolution. You know it. It's time once again for Word Dissection, where we practice what we all do in our teaching and take apart words and translate their parts to deepen our understanding. Sometimes they're old and familiar terms, and sometimes they're terms that are new to us, or maybe so fresh that they're new to everyone. The first word on today's list is obverse. And it goes along with another term we're going to cover, and that is reverse. When we break apart obverse, the first part, ob, O-B, means toward in this case, and verse, that word part, means turn. So literally, it's turn toward. So when we apply it to something with two surfaces, like a coin, or a flag, or a flashcard, then the surface of the card that is turned toward us, that is the front or principal surface, then that's the obverse. Now looking at the opposite word, reverse, that word part re means back. Literally it means again, but in this case it means back. So we can take it to mean turn back, reverse, turn back. So the term reverse usually refers to the back or rear surface of anything like a coin or a flag or a flashcard. So when we're looking at our flashcard, the surface that is facing us at first is called the obverse side, and then when we flip it over, what we see on that side, we're seeing on the reverse side. So we're going to be talking about flashcards, and I'm going to be throwing out the terms obverse and reverse, so I just want to kind of remind us of that. And of course, it's a deeper dive than we usually take with ordinary terms, right? The next word on our list is mnemonic. Now, there's another term that we've all heard before and used ourselves with our students. We kind of broke it down in episode number 45, but it wasn't part of a regular word dissection, so let's kind of review that now. The first part, the MNE, and actually the whole main part of the word, MNEMON, mnemon, that means memory. Literally, it can be sort of translated as mindful, but we usually use it in the sense of memory. And then the IC ending, we've seen it a zillion times before, and that is relating to. So if something is mnemonic, it's relating to mnemon, that is to memory. So it's memory related. And that's all it means. But we usually use it to refer to something that aids our memory, that is, a memory assistance mechanism of some sort. Now, it can be a mnemonic sentence or phrase, where the first letter of each word in the mnemonic sentence has the same first letter of items in a list that we want to memorize. But anything that helps us remember is actually a mnemonic. So it could be just a mental image of something to help remember somebody's name or where something's located or where we left our keys or whatever. That is a mnemonic. So it's actually much broader than we often use it. Another thing about the word mnemonic is it is often mispronounced, and it's often also misspelled as mnemonic. Now, the actual word mnemonic, which is different than mnemonic is spelled Pneumonic, and we use that name a lot too, or at least a little bit. It comes from the word part pneumon, which means lung. And we see that in a lot of terms that we're already familiar with, like pneumonia, pneumothorax, pneumonic plague. And then, of course, the IC ending means relating to. So if something is mnemonic, it's relating to the lung. So if you say, well, here's a mnemonic sentence that helps us remember the 12 classic cranial nerves, that doesn't really make much sense. Here's something lung-related that's going to help us remember the cranial nerves? What? But of course, because they're so similar in their sound, they're very easily confused. So we might have learned that from someone. Maybe that was our initial learning where someone told us it's mnemonic. It's a mnemonic device. So it could be that. Or sometimes, and this happens to me a lot, I'll know the correct pronunciation. I'll know the correct word, but that's not what comes out of my mouth. I don't know why. Because maybe I'm just more used to saying that other term that I don't really mean at that point. I don't know. But that is something to watch out for because it does kind of, affect our credibility when we're dealing with students. If we're always using the wrong word for something, that can kind of ding how we come across as professionals. And I don't know, if you're like me, I just kind of, if I can be right, I want to be right, in terms of proper use of terminology. So that's mnemonic and also mnemonic, two different words that sound alike. And the last word on our list is pseudogene. And that's easy to break apart, right? Pseudo, we know, means false. Gene, well, it literally means create or beget. But here it refers to a unit of genetic code, a gene, that's inherited by each generation of cells or organisms and used to guide cell structure and function. Now, a pseudogene is often defined as a unit of DNA that resembles a gene, but with no genetic function. It's often buried within the code of an actual working, functioning gene. Now, some biologists define pseudogenes as broken or defective genes or groups of genes. And the term junk DNA has also been used to describe them. The National Cancer Institute's Dictionary of Genetic Terms defines pseudogene as a DNA sequence that resembles a gene but has been mutated into an inactive form over the course of evolution. It often lacks introns and other essential DNA sequences necessary for function. Though genetically similar to the original functional gene, pseudogenes do not result in functional proteins, although some may have regulatory effects. And that last statement in the definition from National Cancer Institute is important because that's going to be the opening of a doorway that we're going to walk through when we get to the full episode and talk about a recent article about pseudogenes. This podcast is sponsored by HAPS, the Human Anatomy and Physiology Society, promoting excellence in the teaching of human anatomy and physiology for over 30 years. Hey, if you're thinking about going to the HAPS annual conference next May in Ottawa, and why wouldn't you be thinking about that? Don't forget that you have until February 21st to claim an early bird discount on the registration fee. Now please note, one need not be a bird, or even a birder, to claim the early bird discount. But I have noticed that a lot of birders do claim the discount. Maybe because the prices are cheap? I know. Those bird puns are hard to swallow, right? They're so foul. I don't know. I think a good bird pun can be a real hoot. Okay, I'll stop. I don't want you to egret listening, do I? By the way, February 21st is the same deadline for workshop and poster proposals. Go visit HAPS at theapprofessor.org/HAPS. That's HAPS. I have a new recommendation from the A&P Professor Book Club for you. It's called Anatomists and Eponyms, The Spirit of Anatomy Past. This little book is not very big, but when you start to skim through it, and I'm telling you, you are going to start skimming through it after you pick it up, you'll be impressed with how much is inside this little book. It's one of those books you pick up in a bookshop to glance inside, and a half hour later you find yourself still standing in the same spot and checking your watch to see if you have more time to spend exploring through the book. Anatomists and Eponyms, The Spirit of Anatomy Past, starts out with a brief explanation of what eponyms are and their role in scientific and medical terminology. And then there's a brief synopsis of the history of anatomy through the ages. But the main part of the book looks at the anatomists who lent their name to body structures, organized by systems of the body. Although that initial history synopsis is brief, I think it's important. I always kick off my A&P course with a similar story, so I like hearing someone else's take on it. Doing that makes my story better. I think it also helps students understand how we got to where we are, as well as the cultural factors that will continue to influence how we do human biology into the future. But getting back to the main part of the book, the scientists behind the eponyms, all I can say is, try to stop. I dare you. Each brief entry, which is also illustrated, is fascinating because it brings us face to face with the people behind the names. We now know what they look like, at least in some cases, who they were, and some interesting tidbits of information about their lives and their work. Because each entry is brief and also interesting, we just naturally want to move to the next one because, well, it only takes a couple of minutes to read the next one. It's like French fries. Just one more won't make any difference, right? Pretty soon, the whole supersized bowl of fries is gone. This is both a fun read through the first time and a useful tool to pull off the bookshelf from time to time as you're teaching A&P. Check out Anatomists and Eponyms, The Spirit of Anatomy Past, as well as other books of interest to A&P teachers at theapprofessor.org/book club. A searchable transcript and a captioned audiogram of this preview episode are funded by AAA, the American Association for Anatomy. I've been surfing around the new website at anatomy.org, and I think it's more engaging and easy to use than ever. But what's really fun is discovering all the kinds of resources and activities of AAA, some of which I never knew about. Or maybe I just forgot. Anyway, I recommend checking out anatomy.org right now and consider being part of this dynamic and evolving organization. I'm going to be reminding you about this in the full episode, but I want to mention it now. And that is that as we wind up the second full year of the A&P Professor podcast, it's a good time for reflection. And you may recall that way back in episode 17, I advocated that we all do debriefings or reflections at the end of each academic year. So it's really not very surprising that I'm doing that now with this podcast. Now, part of that process for me this year is gathering feedback from you. So I'm asking you for about 5 minutes of your time to fill out a survey. It's put together by a team of specialists to help me tweak and improve things. No matter if you're a new listener or a longtime listener, whether you've listened to just one episode or even just part of an episode, or maybe you've listened to all the episodes, I don't know. I'd really appreciate your time to respond to the anonymous survey. Just go to theapprofessor.org/survey. Well, this is Kevin Patton signing off for now and reminding you to keep your questions and comments coming. Why not call the podcast hotline right now at 1-833-LION-DEN. That's 1-833-546-6336. Or visit us at theapprofessor.org. I'll see you down the road. This preview episode is sponsored by the American Association of Anatomists, the Human Anatomy and Physiology Society, and the Master of Science in Human Anatomy and Physiology Instruction.